And I discovered that a Navy SEAL wanted to go to dinner with me. Now, if a Navy SEAL wants to go to dinner with me, I'm dropping everything and going to dinner. My respect for the SEALs is huge, right? So we sit down in this restaurant in Hawaii, and I just looked at him and I said, "So what's your story?" And he began to talk, and he talked to me for 2 solid hours. I don't think I said more than 20 words in that 2 hours. I was mesmerized by this man of God. He said, "John, I was raised in the church and I love God passionately." So he said, "I thought in order to really serve God wholeheartedly and purely, I needed to go into ministry." He said, "So I went to 2 years of Bible school." He said, "Then I began to intern in a church, a big church." And he said, "I was interning in their youth group in my 3rd year." And he said, "I was accused of sleeping with a girl." And he looked at me and said, "John, I never slept with her." But he said the elders believed it. And he said, "So they threw me out. Basically, I lost all of my credentials." And he said, "When you're like 21 years old and you lose 3 years of your life, that's a significant loss." Yes. And he said, "I was devastated." And he said, "You know, my relationship with God was about as big as this plate." I remember him looking at this plate that was small. He said, "I dug in and started seeking God like I'd never sought God before in my entire life." And he said, in the middle of seeking God, God said this to me: "I didn't call you to ministry. I called you to military."
Wow.
So he said, "I went to the Air Force, the Marines. I went to the recruiting office for the Army." He said, and the last one was the Navy. And he said, "I was a little nervous because I just felt no life on any of the others." And I'd been praying and praying. He said, the recruiter in the naval office starts going down through a checklist, and he says the word SEALs. And he said, when he said the word SEALs, life exploded on the inside of me. And he said, that's it. That's what I'm supposed to do. And the recruiter looked at him and said, no, you don't want to enlist to be a SEAL. Every guy in this recruiting office enlisted, and every one of us flunked out. Only 10% of the people that enlist for the SEALs make it. And he goes, "I don't care, that's what I'm supposed to do." Well, what the recruiter didn't know, and he didn't know, is that he didn't know how to swim. Think about it, Navy SEAL, you don't know how to swim, come on. And the other thing the recruiter didn't know is that he had very narrow ear canals. And as a young man, they had to do several operations and put tubes in his ears. And so he said, "John, if I got any water in my ears, just a few drops, I would be in excruciating pain." He said, so I started praying, "God, you've called me to do this.
Right.
You got to help me learn how to swim." And he said, I taught myself how to swim through prayer. And he said, then one day I went down 2 feet, I went down 3 feet, I went down 4 feet, I went down 5 feet. He said, no pain. He said, God totally healed my ears. He said, then he went through the SEAL training program, and 3 times he came up to the activation week, and 3 times some catastrophe happened. The first time he was on an obstacle course and a piece of wood went right through his arm. Second time he was on a boat and a big wave came in San Diego, and the guy behind him's oar hit him perfectly in the ear and ruptured his eardrum. Wow. He said, so I had to drop out. God healed me. Then I got in again. And he said the third time they were running with a boat on top of their head on the beach, and some kid dug a hole and his foot went right into him, tore everything in his knee from his ankle up to his knee. The doctor, then he went in for his physical. The doctor flunked him, and he said, John, when you flunk this physical, you can never become a SEAL. And he said, I looked at the doctor and said, Doctor, I have to do this. I have to do this. You can't flunk me out. And the doctor said, young man, because this is an officer, the doctor. Boy, did he let him have it. So he said, then I went to a Bible study that week. And he said, the guy at the Bible study, I didn't realize it, was the commanding officer of that doctor. Wow. Oh, wow. And the man was talking about being led by the Spirit. And he, to illustrate, said, you know, I had an application come across my desk that was denied. And he said, in my spirit, I felt like that was wrong. Wow. And he said, so I overrode the doctor. And he said, John, it ended up being me. Wow. He became a Navy SEAL, and he started telling me about his missions. Guys, I'm telling you, he was telling me things that would cause the hair on my arm to stand up. I remember him telling about how they went into an ambush. It was automatic fire, and he said, I heard whistles going by my head, yet 30 of the SEALs went in, got these guys, and got out, and not one of them got killed. He said 2 weeks later, I'm talking to my mom, and he said, we always carry our phone on our sleeve, and it has to be off, and it can't have pre-programmed numbers or pre-existing dialed numbers on it. It has to be totally clear in case they're captured. He said, my phone had turned itself on, it was off, and called my mother, and she just happened to be in a prayer meeting. And they prayed for our safety when they heard the bullets and the screaming, and he was spared. He started telling me story after story after story like this that night at dinner. And I realized I was sitting with a man that was called to be a SEAL.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has been now a SEAL for 19 years. He is now an instructor, which makes him the elite of the elite. I remember going back to my room that night, the first thing I did was I dialed my wife, Lisa. And I said, Lisa, I was trembling. I said, I've just sat with a man of God for 2 hours. I have sat with many ministers and didn't sense the presence of God that I sensed on this Navy SEAL. He's become a very close friend, and I can call him now, and I call him a lot because I want to know about him, because I want to be a Navy SEAL for God. How about you? Huh? Come on, Pacey. Come on, Jonathan. Come on, Casey. Come on, Arden. Let's, right? Are you getting it? All right. So this leads us to a truth that I want to amplify, all right? Who you are, now listen to me, this is so important. Who you are is the foundation of what you were created to do.
So good.
All right? So your calling, the foundation of your calling is who you are. All right? So here's the truth. Your effectiveness in your specific calling is dependent upon you knowing who you are.